All right, well then I want to talk a little bit about this concept of doing well and doing good, which is on my mind lately, if that's okay with you. I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and so if we look at doing good and doing well, I use a model called the 4 T's, that everything we do in life involves investing 4 T's: time, treasure, talent, and trust. Time, treasure, talent, and trust. So everything we do, we put that into at a high level. And because I'm an economist, that's what my background is, I run models. And so I run an ROI model, return on investment. So we invest time, treasure, talent, and trust. And what do we want out of that? Well, I say that we want a good life. That's sort of what Aristotle would say. We want the feeling of thriving as a human being. Well, I break that down into 2 pieces: doing well and doing good. Doing good is a little fuzzier than doing well. Doing well, we have an entire system of accounting that measures doing well. We can open our checkbook and we can see if we're doing well or not. We can count our pennies, and we have an enormous amount of pennies, or we're getting regular pennies, we feel like we're doing well. But doing good is a little trickier. There's not a lot of metrics for what it really means to... A little squeaky up here. I think I'll stand over here. It's better. We don't have a lot of metrics for what it means to do good work in the world. And so I look at it in a couple different ways. Are we raising the energy up? Are we increasing well-being? Or are we reducing suffering? And that's really a utilitarian view that I pretty much measure everything on these days. Is am I creating well-being, or am I reducing suffering? So in 2005, I sold a software company with some friends. We made a bunch of money, and we did well. But the process of building that software company didn't include a whole lot of doing good. It was just business, sort of business sake. And I read all the business books, and I was an economics major, and I wanted to be a millionaire, and that was just one of the things I wanted to do. So check, became a millionaire. Great. Now what? It didn't feel good. I mean, it just didn't felt nice back here, but it didn't feel that much in here. There wasn't that much going on. So I thought, well, I'm going to go out into the world, and I'm going to find out how to do good. What do people that have money now, how do they make the world a better place? And it's not easy. There's no manual. It's not like I thought. I wrote some checks, here's some money. I didn't last very long. Felt good for a little bit, didn't last very long. I volunteered my time, and that was great. I started getting involved with nonprofits, and I'll tell you honestly that I got a little discouraged in the nonprofit industry because I found really good people being understaffed and under-resourced to do things, and having to go beg more often than not for-profit companies for the funds to do good work in the world. And that really kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I can go get a job, and I've turned down these types of jobs, where we're doing something somewhat meaningless. And not that it's not useful, but there's not a whole lot of meaning in it. I had an opportunity to run a small wireless company back before there were just a couple big ones. And I said, well, what are we going to do to make the world a better place? And they're like, well, we're just going to make a ton of money. And I was like, well, I'm going to pass on that. But there's a lot of companies out there making potato chips or a variety of things that are okay, but don't really make the world a better place and make billions and billions of dollars. And then there's the group of people that really want to make the world a better place and really want to deal with increasing well-being or reducing suffering, and they can't get the funds to do it, and they can't have enough money to actually hire each other. And I thought, why is that? Why are the jobs that make the most difference the ones that pay the least and have the least resources, and the ones that are sort of fluffy and meaningless, those are the ones that you just gobs of cash for doing? Isn't that weird? It's weird. Well, it is called capitalism. And there's some I'm actually writing a book called The Good Economy. As I do this research, I'm like, wow, there's some stuff I didn't realize about how this touches that and caused this thing to happen. But underneath all that, I came out with sort of what Jordan read from my blog post. And I'm glad he read that from Facebook, because sometimes I drink and just post stuff. And I posted last night, we're at a party, and I think I posted last night, my wife's husband is freaking awesome. So thanks for that. Anyway, so what I found was a broken system, honestly. I found that for a variety of reasons throughout American history, we've built a system that's actually backwards. That doing really good work in the world is very complicated, and doing so much meaningless world is very easy. So I thought, well, that seems like a problem I should work on. Let's all get together and do that. Okay, that's hard to fix that problem. But it's still worth doing. It's just a little complicated. So I started traveling the world looking for how I could best plug in to the system to help sort of fix that. And that's what led me to Grand Rapids. And if you've read a couple of the articles I've posted, you'll see that I found something's meaningful here. I find that the people get it. There's a lot of good people that get it. I find that Grand Rapids is easy. I don't say it's easy, I take that back. There are not major obstacles for being involved. It still takes a lot of work. And if you're dedicated, it can be done. But that's different than in a city like Manhattan, where it's really noisy, or you can say maybe LA, where it's just a lot of stuff going on. Here it's very approachable. You can get to people and you can make things happen. 2 years ago I walked up, I didn't know anybody in Grand Rapids, and I met somebody and they said, do you want to help run TEDx Grand Rapids? And 8 months later we had this huge event that I pretty much ran, having not met anybody. So if I can do that with having not met anybody, people that know people can do a lot of great stuff. So that's what we're trying to, I've partnered up with Bill Holsinger Robinson, Bill HR, who was the founding director of Art Prize for Rick DeVos. And he and I have started this thing called Seed Collective, which is our new consultancy. And then we're leading into something we call GR Collective, which is basically this, taking all the awesome people and giving them a way to work and think and play all the time. Wouldn't that be great? Across companies, across institutions, academics, people that are working in corporations, nonprofit folks, all having the resources to do work, kick back, plug into a major bandwidth, share ideas, and a place to do it, and some programming, so Bill and I would make sure it's all going really well, and just make that's where you work. Maybe you go to the office, maybe sometimes you go to this place, and you have these kind of conversations all the time. And maybe once a year, we run a little contest, and we say, what's the biggest problem in West Michigan? And we go, oh, it's this year. And maybe all year long, all the super creative people work on that problem and try to check it off. And then next year we get another one. I mean, why can't we do that? Recently when Steve Jobs passed away, a lot of stuff came up about Steve Jobs. And I saw this old video of him when he was really young, had that big furry, had a squirrel on his face beard kind of thing going on. And he said, everything in the world that we call life, everything that you think is real and concrete, I'm paraphrasing, was made by people no smarter than you. And you can change it. We can change it. We can change it. We can make a world where when you say, this is the work I do, I am trying to increase well-being and reduce suffering, people go, wow, I have a job for you, or you must be making a lot of money and be living a really good life. And then when you say, well, I've just come up with this new GMO-based potato chip extrusion machine, they go, wow, you're going to have a tough life because that won't pay very well. Nobody likes to eat extruded potato chips. Why would you even want to do that? So anyway, that's what we're working on. That's sort of the direction we're going. I haven't seen any of my Time Nazi cards. 10 minutes, good. I was just trying to get a feel for where I'm at. Okay, good. I just trying to keep track of what's going on. So anyway, that's sort of what my deal is these days. I'm really focused on this concept of doing well and doing good, and it's curious and it's not easy, and it's bumpy human stuff. I've been doing some things with TEDx Grand Rapids. Last year we looked out in the audience at TEDx Grand Rapids and we realized it was full of white men. And not that there's not a bunch of white men in West Michigan, because there are, but it was just noticeably white. And I thought, well, we must not be talking to all the right people, because there's lots of different kinds of colors and hairstyles and measurements, and I'm just not seeing enough sort of stuff going on in the audience. And so we reached out to a variety of minority leaders and said, we just want to make sure that you guys know what's going on, and sort of spread the word. And that didn't go as easily as I thought. What I thought was interesting, that conversation got bumpy. And people ask, well, what are you really trying to do, and what's your agenda? Now, a lot of people got it immediately. A lot of people said, yeah, awesome, thanks for doing that. And then other people said, whoa, wait a minute, what are you really trying to do? I'm like, trying to make the world a better place. That's what I'm trying to do. They said, well, I don't trust you. I don't trust that. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because it's all about trust. And when it comes down to it comes down to trust. And we have these trust circles. Have you ever heard of the Dunbar number? Dunbar number is some research that was done on chimpanzees, and it's that the Dunbar number, invented by a man named Dunbar, says that the human brain can only hold 150 close relationships-ish. And that's your circle. That's your circle. That's your us. When you say us, it's this 150 people max. And there's different levels in that of really close relationships, but 150 people max. And so what happens is we all sort of identify as an us. I'm an us. I'm a bald guy, so I'm with any bald people out there? Yeah, my bald brothers. Thank you very much. I'm a bald guy. I'm a grandfather. All these ways that I identify with myself. And one of the things that we do is we identify as underneath our logos, which are the companies that we work for oftentimes. And I find that one of the things, you mentioned capitalism, and capitalism is really built on this concept of competition and ownership, which is funny, because it's not really working anymore for a variety of reasons. And even in West Michigan, I find that there are really good, solid, healthy companies filled with really great people who sort of have a competitiveness against other people in other companies in our area, right? Us versus them, our company and their company. Now, there's lots of good competition, MSU versus UMM. That could be fun. And it could be fun, it could be fun. It gets out of hand, doesn't it? MSU versus U of M can get out of hand a little bit. But it could be fun. It could be fun, say, Steelcase versus Herman Miller. That could be fun. But sometimes it gets really serious. It gets really serious. And sometimes both organizations won't play in the same sandbox. And yet everybody I meet in those organizations are all awesome people. They all go like, yeah, I want to make the world a better place. But as a group underneath that circle that they call a company, then there's some tension. So I find that funny. I find that interesting, that the competition, capitalism is based in competition. It is. And so I'm proposing we have it's sort of a transcendent include new forms of working with each other. And so here's my proposal, and you guys can go out and be leaders in this if you want. Ways of doing business that put people before profits. And not instead of, because that doesn't work. We don't really have economic systems that can deal without profit. Just in front of. Just making good choices for people first. Human-centered commerce. Human-centered commerce. Like our selling and our building and our doing and our using of resources leads first with making sure that we're all okay. And then the profit piece and the competition piece is sort of survival of the fittest. Imagine a world where you're trying to make the world a better place and you're competing to do that. Well, that leads to a pretty good outcome, right? That leads to really good resource use. And that leads to companies merging and going, you know what, we could work better together than apart. We could do more good if we're together than if we're apart. Not if we're together, we can make a lot of money for a small number of people. But if we're together, we can do more good than if we're apart. That's an interesting merger. I'd like to see that on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. Two companies merge to do more good, because they can do more good together than apart, right? It leads to companies going out of business because what they're doing is just not useful anymore. Maybe even because they've done so much good, they're done. And then all those resources go to the next thing. Now see, that to me is a very sensible economy. It still has competition in it, but we're not competing against each other. We're competing to serve each other. We're competing to make the world a better place. We're competing to figure out how to best use electricity and our natural resources and our time and our talent and our trust and our treasures. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on. I call it collaboratism.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
You're an economist and you understand business. So
I hope so.
How do capital markets, equity markets, et cetera, that are built upon investment to expand enterprise, how does that work in this construct? I understand in theory it sounds great, but how, in a private company sense, it might work. But when there's other factors involved, how does that play into your? That's
a great question. I have no idea. I don't really have an answer to that. I look at the capital markets, and when I go out to raise money for a variety of deals, and I'll tell you about what I'm working on. I'm typically pitching 40 to 50% IRRs. Right? If I'm going to do a private venture deal, I'm going to say, look, if you give us this amount of money, I'm going to give you 10 times back that. I'm pitching 5 to 10 times back that on the backside.
Because that's the way the deal works. If you invest in something, you invest in 10 things, only 1 to 3 are going to come out. The other ones are going to go under, and so you have to have that portfolio management, right?
Sure.
Right. But that can be solid portfolio management. But the reality is, people are trying to maximize their return with no upper bound. And so, if you look at doing well and doing good as potential returns on investment, then you have to look at non-financial returns, and we don't have any good systems for that. I mean, I actually, I really don't have an answer. There's a variety of us. As a matter of fact, I just sent an email to Seth Godin today on this very topic. I said, Seth, working on this collaboratism thing, here's an issue, we want to talk about it. We'll see what he has to say. I can envision a stock market that has a set of metrics where the company's value actually goes up and down based on its ability to be profitable and the amount of good it does in the world. But here's the problem, we don't have metrics for good. I think the underlying problem is that we don't have metrics for good, solid metrics. There's no accounting for good. And I don't think until that's done, some of these other things are going to be easy to do. I don't think the capital markets are going to all of a sudden just be kind until we find some sort of unilateral way to measure the outcomes of good. And that's been a problem since the 1700s. People have been working on that.
I think in my mind, so if the goal of a company that does well hires people, correct? So the fact that someone is employed in a job gives them an outlet to do good in the world. If they don't have a job, they don't have a treasure to do, to give back to society. So is it, and this follows here, so is the fact, in your example where a company that's making extruded, GMO potato chips,
okay,
if that goes out of business, there's a lot of people that don't have a job anymore.
Right.
So,
But it is a self-fulfilling system, right? Why do they need a job? They need a job so they can get money. Why do they need money? Well, they need money to get some basic resources.
Right.
And if we really dig into that, if we really take the time to dig into it, which we don't normally do as a culture, we see a couple different things. One, our money is broken. Mm-hmm. There's some interesting things about money. We only have one type of money, which means everything has to be translated into that type of money. Now imagine for a second we had money that was only used for food and healthcare. So imagine the Maslow triangle, right? And imagine that each level at Maslow's hierarchy had its own money. So that the money you use for self-actualization is different than the money you use for feeding people. Well, it's interesting, right? Because that means that you don't risk an entire economy. You don't risk the money. You risk monetary collapse with this. You do all your gambling and financial games with your other kinds of money. That could be interesting. So complementary currencies could be one way to start solving this problem. It's not going to solve just the way it is right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jay Cohen has an interesting concept called the B Corporation,
Oh, yeah.
where he's trying to follow with Fred Keller.
Yeah. Fred's the largest one in the world right now.
Absolutely. Even with West Michigan, you talk about even our own companies who do a lot of great things in the community, don't want that label of who's good, who's bad, who's determining, and who's stamping that B Corp logo on it. And oh, by the way, are they making money while doing it? Jay's pretty smart, so he'll probably make some money out of doing it. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that kind of tries to intersect itself into the system that we play.
I like the concept of B Corp a lot. I do think it's interesting that you have to pay to be one. And but on the other hand, that's the funny thing. Trust me, there's not a lot of good answers right now. This is one of those things where, it reminds me of the racial inclusivity meeting that I had, where it was just awkward. And although we were moving the ball forward, there was no obvious solution to some of the really intense conversations that we're having, because there's a long history of complication that involves human trust issues. And so even though we're going forward, we still sort of have to just sit with this discomfort. And I think this is part of all of these questions are going to lead with that. We're going to just have this discomfort knowing there's not a clear answer. As long as we hold the intention to get an answer, we can get better. But what I like about the B Corp is the concept that it takes away the legal issue of leaders in a company making choices for all independent stakeholders as opposed to just making profit. Now you just add in that paragraph, boom, and you're done. Now what's interesting is you can write a paragraph just like that and inject it into your articles of corporation and not be a B Corp, and you get basically the same big outcome. But there is a benefit of being an entity. What's equally interesting about the B Corp is the B Corp guys need some money because we haven't created a system yet where they don't need money. So if they're making a lot of money doing good in the world, that's sort of like the halfway point for me. It's like if you're trying to do something really meaningful and you figured out a way to make good money at it, more power to you. And then hire some people and teach them how to do it. And along the way, let's solve some of these really big systemic problems we have in capitalism that are probably only going to be solved when something really big and nasty happens, like an economic collapse. But we got to talk about it now so that when that does happen, we know how to put other things in place.
I'm curious if you've had a chance to explore the role that employee ownership might play in some of these concepts. By no means would it be a solution, but something like 100% ESOP-owned company, for instance.
No.
Does that kind of start to move the ball a little bit in the direction you're talking about?
I think that's a piece of it. You know, I think anytime the investors in anything, not just financial investors in a company, but human investors in anything, investing in time, treasure, talent, or trust in any sort of portfolio system into a thing, are engaged in the outcome personally, then I think that's very interesting. You know, for example, what if between high school and college everybody was compulsory, had to be put into a 2-year American program where you went out and did better in the world? Oh, but here's the caveat: if we're at war, you have to go to war. Well, suddenly everybody's really concerned about whether we're at war or not. Suddenly everybody's involved in foreign policy, because if your kid graduates high school and can either go around the world and make the world a better place or has to go to Afghanistan, everybody's talking about foreign policy. So I think that's the thing, that when you have employee-owned companies, the employees are involved in the outcome of the company. Although we have to create a world where the employees still want to do good and well, and not just well. Otherwise you have you just have a bunch of small shareholders all having the same problem.
Can you tell us about one of your projects that you're working on?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you about the GR Collective. I'll tell you more details about the GR Collective. So the GR Collective is meant to be, over time, we'd like to see 2,000 people of the super creative class. It's a membership-based system. It's like a sports club or a country club, where instead of having racquetball courts or a golf course, you have all the things you need to make the world a better place. And a lot of programming and people helping you find a thriving in your life and connecting you to other people who are doing the same thing. So that's the vision of it. How we get from here to there we're working on. But what's interesting is that it's not a wealth generator for anybody. It's not meant to be a hockey stick. So when I'm going out and trying to raise money to get this off the ground, I can't say, if you give me $1 million, I give you $10 million back, because it's not going to work that way. And that's complicated. That's one of the things we're trying to work out, is what is the best practice for creating an institution that's a for-profit, because there's a lot of flexibility a for-profit company has, even at low or no profit. I mean, how many for-profit companies actually lose money? That would be an upside-down profit company. Versus sort of the board-based bureaucratic system of a non-profit. Now, there's tons of great non-profits out there. I'm just not a fan of the system because it has a lot of stuff connected to it that I really don't want anything to do with. One of the things I like is that Michigan has an L3C. You guys know this vehicle, the L3C vehicle? Low profit, limited liability. Those are the 3 C's, right? This meant to be in this place between for-profit and non-profit, although we really haven't taken it for a really good solid test drive yet. So we're talking about that for a GR Collective, is should it be an L3C? Currently, the only benefit in L3C is that private foundations can invest into it through PRI funds, which is nice, but it's still not real obvious and slick. But it does allow for an entity to take stage and say, we are going to pay people, we are going to be a for-profit company, we're just going to really manage what that profit is and use it accordingly. So that's interesting. The other thing that's interesting as an obstacle is when we start talking about having, for example, somebody from company A come to the GR Collective, and somebody from company B come to the GR Collective, which will be an awesome place to do things. So you want to get out of the office and just get your head going around some innovative ideas, maybe interact with some other people. Some of the feedback we've heard, limited, but some of the feedback is, well, what about intellectual property? You know, how are we going to manage intellectual property? Well, that's interesting, because there's an issue there. You know, it's a collaboration. It's meant to be human collaboration. So even these really root issues of my company, your company, my IP, your IP, all begin to come in play. We're asking these questions. How do we best do that? You know, in a collaborative system, truly people collaborating. Who knows game theory? Maybe no game theory, right? So in game theory, collaboration is the best answer, right? It's the best answer. So knowing that mathematically, collaboration is the best answer, how do we actually do that? Well, we have a lot of stuff that we've wired together that's not built that way. It's all built on competition, right? Prisoner's dilemma.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you've heard of Grid 70 downtown?
Yeah.
So my company is there, along with Emmett Wolfring Worldwide. Steelcase and Wire and Amway, obviously. So we had
Which one was you? Because I didn't get.
Wolverine Worldwide.
Okay, thank you.
So we had, there was one particular topic dealing with Gen Y, people trying to understand this generation, how to, just learn what can we do to increase our business there. It was great. We had a collaborative kind of session where companies shared their research on the topic. But those companies, it wasn't Steelcase and Herman Miller both trying to sell the same product to that same consumer.
Right.
So, but in an environment where, you might have two companies that are competing, as you mentioned, I mean, how does that, it's really dicey.
It's chunky, isn't it? I mean, Blake's done a great job, and the whole Grid 70 thing is awesome, right? Got this, the idea of bringing companies together, they're all in that building.
Yeah.
Right? They're all there. It's a start.
Yeah.
What's funny, this may not be true, but I've heard this, is each company all has its own internet pipe going out, right? So they couldn't share a pipe because can't share bits, all have to have their own pipe. That's funny, kinda. You drink the same coffee. So where's the line? I think Grid 70 is a great example of moving the ball forward and sharing space. We have so much more work to do. So that's what we're trying to do in GR Collective is not only do it, not only have the fun of doing it, the fun of hanging out and making the world a better place together, but solving some of these problems on a small scale, and then going off and teaching the rest of the world how we did it. I saw hands up.
What's the next TEDx Grand Rapids, and then how would we get someone or become involved in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. The next TEDx Grand Rapids is at the Grand Rapids Civic Theater on May 10th. The way to get a ticket, so it's a 100% invite only system, which is it's curated system. And that's how we make sure that everybody in the audience is awesome. Because really TEDx Grand Rapids is about the audience. The speakers are sort of nice to have. It's really about getting all the people in the audience together. So the way we do that is an application system. So if you go to our website, tedxgrandrapids.org, it'll say apply, and you click the button, and then you'll see a short application. Take it very seriously. What we really want to see is your heart, honestly. When I have the opportunity to talk to people before they fill out the rap, just fill your heart into that space as best you can. And we had some questions like, well, what if I'm not a good writer? Then go find a good writer, or bounce it off of somebody before you share it. Take it really seriously, because then we sit down. Everybody to us is exactly the same thing. Everybody to us is a couple paragraphs in black and white screen. We don't see companies, we don't see color, we don't see height or weight. We just see what you write. And then we look at that and we say, wow, that person seems like they're really amazing. It's all based on writing, which can be very narrow, but it's the only way that we have to make it ubiquitous. So,
what about that group that you're working on as it relates to the trust?
Well,
are there still more efforts that you're...
Yeah, please, yes, and constantly. I mean, here's what we did with those folks. We brought them in and we said, look, we kicked TEDx Grand Rapids off on Facebook and Twitter. To my surprise, not everybody watches Facebook and Twitter. Who knew that, right? And so halfway through, we did a live streaming of TED last year, right around February, and we put something in the Grand Rapids Press, in the newspaper. The touchy-feely sort of opened the newspaper. I didn't have a TV, so I'm not a good... I don't have a TV and I don't have the newspaper. But a whole other group of people read the newspaper, and so they showed up to this stream. We're like, wow. And then I was on TV and a whole other group, and we're like, you know what? There are multiple channels of trust information flowing. Some of it is digital, some of it's the newspaper, and a lot of it's human being stuff. So we went up to a lot of minority leaders and just said, we just want you to know this is happening. Tell people. So just tell people. Just drop off the site. Once you fill out your application, just take the link and send it to a bunch of people that you think should be there. Same for all of you. Please, if you want to get TEDx Grand Rapids, fill out an application, and then send it to 5 or 10 people that that are awesome human beings that should also be there. The best problem that we have is when it's really, really hard to decide who should be in those seats. I'll leave you with this. I measure my life in days. We all live about 30,000 days, plus or minus. Some of us a whole lot more, some of us a lot less. Today is my 17,452nd day of life. And I was really glad to keep it with you. Thank you.